For more on this, I'm now joined from King's College London by Anthony Pereira. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, just how long has overcrowding been an issue in Brazilian prisons?
Well, at least the last 10 years. Since 2005, the prison population in Brazil has more than doubled. As you heard in that segment, it's now the fourth largest in the world, but spending hasn't kept up. And so you have very degrading conditions in a lot of Brazilian prisons with extreme overcrowding, infectious diseases, violence, and it's a real failure of the Brazilian state to provide for the security of people in these prisons. One thing is worth remembering: almost 40% of people in Brazilian prisons have not yet been convicted of a crime. They're awaiting trial, and so this failure to provide security in prisons is a real problem in Brazil, which has been endemic. Unfortunately, hundreds of people die in Brazilian prisons every year, or are killed every year in prisons.
Is it because of the conditions? Our reporter described them as horrific. Is it because of that we're seeing so many deadly riots in Brazil?
Well, I think there are different types of violence in the prisons. The most deadly massacre that we had in Brazil in prisons was Carandiru in '92, which was a rebellion by prisoners, and most of the killing was done by the police, who came in to try to put down the rebellion. This is not that type of violence. What commentators are saying about this one is that it was two gangs, one gang turning on the other for control of the cocaine traffic in the region. So they're different reasons, and it's not clear that all of the violence would be eliminated through more spending and better and more places, more room for prisoners. But that's certainly it seems like a necessary reform.
That's the thing, because I'm sorry to interrupt, but you could think that there's a link, because if, in fact, inmates are living in terrible conditions and perhaps there's not much oversight, there aren't enough staff, then that in itself leads to conditions where violence between gangs is more likely.
Absolutely. I think there is a link. These prisons are very understaffed. The response of the governor of Amazonas, actually, for this massacre was to say that police would come into the prisons. So I think there's definitely a link. What you have, though, as well, is organized crime groups that have started in prison and are now basically running criminal rackets from within the prison. And that requires a somewhat different approach. That requires an end to the collusion between agents of the state and people in these criminal gangs. And that's a slightly different issue, and it is also difficult to tackle.
Because, of course, when you hear about such riots, you wonder how inmates would have got hold of weapons. So what you're saying then is that some guards must have let them in.
I think, yes, that collusion in terms of letting people get mobile phones and weapons into the system, that's that kind of nexus that we have that's why I think the governor proposed putting the police in to try to have better inspection regime and more searches. But that is one of the problems.
What about on a federal level? What's the government doing? Are they prepared to spend more on prisons?
Well, the Minister of Justice did go to Manaus. He talked about finding out who the leaders of the massacre are and transferring them to federal prisons. He's also promised more money to create more spaces. But the fund that he controls, the Ministry of Justice's fund for prisons, that's actually been cut 49% over the last 10 years. So he's got a lot of ground to make up. And it's not clear that in the short term, I think that is a long-term solution, and probably some more money will go into building spaces in prisons. But in the short term, we're probably going to see continuation of violence, unfortunately, in the prisons. And one would expect perhaps also some sort of legal action on the part of family members of those killed in this massacre against the state of Amazonas because of what happened in this incident.
All right, well, we really appreciate your time and your analysis. Anthony Pereira from King's College London. He is the head of the Brazil Institute at King's College London. Thank you.
Thank you.